The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL.
Lamar Jackson has finally given us a peek behind the curtain.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast.
Lamar Jackson finally gave us some insight on his injury situation. We also talk about in the second part of the show some experts expressing some concern on the Ravens with recent trends. And then finally, Ravens and Bengals, that Week 13 game. We'll talk about it here, and we'll do that with former Ravens receiver and Super Bowl champion Qadry Ismail of Missile Training and MissileTraining.com, who's here with us today. I want to remind everyone, today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Q, feels good for this team to be back above 500. Felt weird to have them in the spot they were early in the season. You know, the offense was playing well at the beginning of the year. That was really the defense that had to step their game up. They certainly have. It's now the offense that's lagging a bit behind, but you go 1-0 every week, regardless of how pretty or how ugly a win is. A win is a win.
Win is a win. And we talked about for weeks now getting back to the coveted 500, but then also continuing it and getting past that really coveted 500 mark. And so they did that. They're 6-5 now. And I think part of football is testing your resilience, because you know that each and every game, each and every season, each and every moment brings on a different flavor, and it's how you can react to it that's going to really define you as a team and define your season. So the fact that they're 6-5, they're the top of the AFC North, the AFC in general. We've been saying for weeks on this show, as well as our squad show, that it's such a up and down division or conference this year. And for the Ravens to keep pace with this conference, you have to take care of business in the AFC North. Well, you got a 3-game stretch right here where it is going to be an AFC North extravaganza. And at the same time, it's the Bengals, Steelers, Bengals. So I'm looking forward to seeing how it all kicks off with the tryptophan game, a.k.a. Thanksgiving Day festivities.
Yeah, we all know Mike Tomlin holds a really, I guess, not so special place in Ravens fans' hearts for that play on Jacoby Jones. And, of course, rest in peace to Jacoby. But I think that, you know, with the sandwich that they have, the Bengals, Steelers, Bengals, we're going to learn a lot about this team probably over the next 3 weeks as they continue their quest for the AFC North crown, which they now lead by virtue of tiebreaker. So that's a nice little thing the Ravens have going for them. But Q, a lot of attention right now has been on Lamar Jackson and his injury situation and how the offense has performed, and rightfully so, because it hasn't been great over the last handful of weeks, where Lamar obviously dealt with the hamstring injury, missed a month due to that, and he's come back on the injury report with the last 3 weeks being with a different injury. You know, he obviously had the knee injury, then it's the ankle, and now it's the toe injury. And so Lamar spoke to the media on Tuesday, because again, you have all these Thursday night game. It gets you all kind of out of sorts with how the practice schedule goes. But Lamar did speak, and he obviously returned to practice, and said he actually gave us a little peek behind the curtain on how the toe injury happened. And I know a lot of people have been wondering about kind of the details on how these injuries are happening or what's going on. He said that he hurt his toe in the first quarter of that Jets game, but he said he's good. And then he ended up saying he's feeling better in some areas, which is a little bit of a shift from what his, I guess, messaging has been, where he hasn't been saying he's been healthy, but it was more along the lines of like, oh yeah, you know, I can't really call where it's happening. Like, clearly something's up with Lamar, and it's okay. I mean, guys go through injuries over the course of their career, and Lamar's been a fighter for going through these things and playing through them, because clearly he's not 100% right. But, you know, it just feels like if every week you're going to have a new injury, you're getting hit and there have been these hits, Q, every week. I'm just like, oh, Lamar, please get up. And that's not what you want to feel, especially with the offensive line concerns that we've all expressed here about this team. I mean, going back to week 1 with that Ed Oliver hit that seems to maybe have jump-started this whole thing, We did get a peek behind the curtain, but I'm curious, Q, your thoughts on, based off your expertise in sports performance and sports movement, with a player like Lamar Jackson, who we know can sit back in that pocket and slice and dice you up with his arm, but then, him with the mobility aspect and him not running as much. I mean, how much do those leg injuries truly affect a player like Lamar Jackson?
Well, again, if you look at Lamar throughout his career and his style of play, Lamar is the most dynamic player in the NFL. And with that dynamic play comes the extreme ability to make cuts and moves unlike any other. At the same time, that fast twitch to super fast twitch muscle fiber combination that he has been gifted with, when you take a hit and a tweak like he has, it affects your game and it will affect it in a very noticeable way. And I think that's where a lot of people are looking at it when it comes to Lamar's play. Like, there's a running lane right there. We can clearly see, oh, Lamar's about to take off, and oh, he's not. Oh, wow, Lamar did take off, and he's going to, oh, boy, he got caught. Lamar is scrambling to extend the play outside the pocket, but oh, boy, they got him. And so it's the unusual look that we're just not accustomed to seeing from Lamar Jackson because he's such a dynamic player. That's what makes it look a little off. And so that a little off is something that brings him back down to the rest of the players in the league. Everybody else is like, hey, man, we don't have to worry about Superman doing his Superman thing because he got a piece of kryptonite stuck in the side of his abdomen. And so that's slowing him down. So whether it be the toe, the ankle, the knee, the hamstring, it's all of those little knickknacks that we are seeing that is causing Lamar not to be at his best. Even throwing the ball, we're not seeing the accuracy that we've been accustomed to seeing, and him being able to dial in, just the different levels of throws, evident in this most recent game that he had. So back-to-back weeks where those injuries and those knickknacks have built up on him.
Yeah, and again, Lamar is not the first quarterback. He's going to be far from the last quarterback to have to deal with injuries during a season. And again, like he said that after his mind says like he's healthy enough to go out there. It's not, his injuries aren't an excuse in his mind, to play the way he's playing, but they are clearly going to have an impact on his game. And while I still have confidence in his arm, even if he doesn't have the mobility as much as, we're accustomed to, having Lamar not be 100% Lamar, or at least as close to that as you can get over the course of a season, it has impacted the offense. But obviously, the offensive line's been that big topic of conversation, which I mentioned earlier about well, he's taking all these hits. If a guy's already banged up and injured, the last thing you want is for him to take more hits and to not feel safe and comfortable back there in the pocket, where we know if Lamar Jackson just has time to throw, he will go through his reads, he will slice and dice you up. If he gets blitzed and the blitz doesn't get there, he's able to go and check it down to somebody or find a guy who's open in one-on-one coverage. So with the O-line and everything that we've seen, obviously Andrew Voorhees had a pretty poor game against the Jets last week. Falele had his moments. Linderbaum had his moments too. Just feels like, like the pass protection on the outside with Stanley and Rosengarten was decent, at least. Like you at least like to see that, although I guess Jermaine Johnson didn't with his whole social media post thing that he had on Monday. But like the O-line, Q, it is still such a concern point. It feels like you and I talk about this every single week and every single time we talk with one another. John Harbaugh kind of floated the idea of a rotation potentially with Emory Jones. I personally, Q, have never been a fan of the rotation. I just feel like you start a guy and you go with it. But if it was a rotation, maybe of Emory Jones for Falele, Emory Jones for Voorhees in that guard position where they're alternating drives or alternating quarters. The Ravens have done that, so they're no stranger to it. Is that something that you feel like the Ravens should try out, if not just for the blocking, but for the health of Lamar Jackson?
The rotation is unique. It's very interesting how the uniqueness of it when it comes to being exclusively the Baltimore Ravens. I have not seen a offensive line rotation like ever. I've seen it with the Baltimore Ravens, and somehow it works. I think part of it was originally to give Ronnie Stanley like those little breaks because he had the devastating knee injury and ankle injury a few seasons back. And because that, he had to kind of pace himself. So they would go ahead and put, that rotation in there. When you look at the play now, it's not based upon whether or not a guy is injured or not. It's based upon performance. And what we're seeing with this offensive line and what you just mentioned, Kevin, the amount of injuries and the amount of poor play from Lamar Jackson because he just simply can't be the player that he needs to be. And the offensive line is not allowing him to set up in the pocket and just like, all right, bet I know I have this going on with me, knee, ankle, toe, hamstring. But if I can just get time to go through my reads, bro, I'm going to slice y'all and dice y'all. Well, the D line for the opposing opponent, like, ha, yeah, because your O line ain't allowing that to happen. And that's the struggle. That's the struggle that we're seeing with the way in which they're playing. So the rotation is interesting if that's what the Ravens are going to do. And if John Harbaugh feels that's successful, because it's based upon your merit and not necessarily because of a guy in his injury.
Yeah, and you're right. It's not giving him time to go through his reads. On that Jawan Briggs sack that Andrew Voorhees got beaten like a millisecond on that play, you could still see the crossers developing on that play. Like guys were getting to their spots, but Lamar was already practically down on the ground by the time there was even a shot to throw those balls out there. So you either have to adjust and just throw more short, quick stuff, or you got to get guys out there. But playing a rookie and Emory Jones in a rotation, not giving him, I mean, it's all like none of it's really a good option at this point. You kind of just have to roll with what you have. And, they're winning. So at least all this is happening while they're winning. But again, the concern point comes up as we get later in the season into the postseason. Is that going to hold up, especially because, and I'm glad the defense, because Lamar's been asked to save this team so much over and over and over again. I'm glad that the defense is, giving Lamar a little break from that, saying, it's okay, you can struggle a little bit, Lamar. We'll hold it down, keep you attached, keep this offense attached. And, obviously there are a lot of different reasons for the struggles for Lamar Jackson, injuries, O-line play, etc.
The NFL season is rolling along, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for the weekend with this can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits how I like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add a little more energy to your Sunday. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
The Cincinnati Bengals are 3-8, and Joe Burrow is returning for Thanksgiving Thursday Night Football.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast.
Joe Burrow posting on Instagram, I'm back in his ancient, much too small LeBron James jersey on Instagram. That's a picture from his younger days. Zach Taylor not really disguising it either.
Mm-hmm.
What were your initial thoughts?
Honestly, so twofold. It's twofold, Jake. It's twofold. One, yay, get to see Joe Burrow play again. By the way, that caption, that's a Snapchat image from 2014 of Joe Burrow in a throwback original LeBron James Cavs jersey from the mid 2000s when he was with Cleveland the first time, when he through SI and through Lee Jenkins announced that he was returning home to Cleveland. And so that's what it was. And it was, he's back. And it's iconic because you have Joe Burrow then, who was early high school Joe Burrow, and one of his sports heroes, LeBron James, is back. Crazy that LeBron is still playing when you put it in that perspective. And Joe Burrow, obviously, one of the best on the planet. So it fits. And unfortunately, it's fit far too often.
Fit. It's a little small. Let's be real.
No, I mean the caption. Like he's back.
It's fine.
Okay. It doesn't fit. You're right. And honestly, Joe Burrow coming back doesn't really fit this season. That's what sucks about this. It sucks because the Bengals defense let us down for most of the Joe Flacco era. The past two games, the offense has let us down, and the defense to a large degree against the Steelers. Let's be honest here. They were not good against Pittsburgh. But you throw that together and it's like, yeah, he's back to climb Mount Everest at less than 100%. Oh, and by the way, not only is it Everest, but now we're going below sea level to get up to Everest, because now they're 3-8, not just 3-7 after his full practices. So like,
and it's winter and you get no oxygen and you're still going up that mountain.
It's just so tough. And so I get it. Like, I think a lot of people disagreed with me. I would have played him against the Patriots. I know he would have been super sore today. I know it's a short week. I get all of that. It's just 4-7 with Joe Burrow. It feels so much different than 3-8, given the state of the division, with 2 matchups against the Ravens and a matchup against the Browns to end the season. It's just, it does, but you can't look back. You got to look forward. So it's twofold. One, I do wonder, like, he's not going to get a full practice this week. There's an estimated practice report on Monday. On Tuesday, it's a glorified walkthrough because a lot of the guys haven't fully recovered or even close to fully recovered from Sunday. And then you travel to Baltimore on Wednesday, you have a little walkthrough, and then Thursday you play the game. The good news is here, he can get plenty of reps with Jamar Chase because Jamar didn't play and Joe obviously didn't play. So maybe you could go that route and they get a little bit more of an extensive workout in. But yeah, I mean, this is Joe coming back and needing to run the table. There's no margin for error. And I think that's got to be his approach. And that's just a real tall mountain to climb for the Bengals star quarterback.
Yeah, nobody wants to hear this. There is technically, for now, a path to the playoffs without winning out. But that's like,
sure.
Yeah, the mountain is to the moon. You know, we're not talking about Mount Everest. We're talking about finding a way to levitate at that point. But
with no fuel.
Yeah, like you got to jump and escape Earth's gravitational pull to yeah. We're talking about some Superman stuff, which Joe's going to go try to do.
Yes.
That's why he's coming back. And I think he wants to play football, but there are a lot of fans out there, James, that are just like, what are we doing? What is the point of Joe Burrow coming back and playing football?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a big question. And honestly, I hear it. You cannot entirely say like, that's dumb. It's not dumb. I think it's a reasonable thought process to say like, if there's a risk of re-injury here, what is the upside of Joe Burrow returning in a season where you need to win out? And not only do you need to win out, you need to win out in a game starting with Thursday Night Football in Baltimore, where you haven't been able to win. AFC North teams have such a hard time on the road on Thursday night games. And that's Joe's first game back. And we know that Burrow has taken time in the past to ramp up. Like, what version of Joe Burrow are we going to get this week? We're going to have potentially slightly diminished mobility, right? Maybe a little bit of less push off from that injured foot than he's used to if he's trying to wriggle free from a sack or escape the pocket and needs a quick bursty movement. Maybe a little bit less explosive off that leg. I don't know how exactly it will impact him between that and just whatever rust may or may not exist for him, and a difficult first test to deal with in a, I guess they're still all must-win games until the Bengals are technically eliminated, but you're going to get sick of us saying it. Like that's what his mindset certainly would be for this game when they're not mathematically eliminated. And you have a chance to take 2 off of the Ravens who, you go look at the projections right now. The Ravens are like 81% to win the division, according to all those models that are out there, namely the New York Times in this case.
The Bengals can cost the Ravens the division for sure. Like if they win those 2 games, like the Ravens are in trouble. Like the Ravens better win all of their other games if they want to clinch the division. And we'll see. Pittsburgh may just keep stubbing their toe and go that route. It made me do a whole survey. Like I love watching Joe Burrow play. I think the Bengals are always going to have a chance when he's on the field. They're going to have a chance on Thursday, and they're going to be shorthanded again. And we can get to that coming up. But that's what's so tough about this is he's coming back and it's 3-8, and you didn't get that Jets game, and you couldn't go 500 with Joe Flacco playing pretty good ball. There's been some reflections.
Even 300 would have been okay.
Yeah, 2 wins. Yeah, just even the Jets game. Like if they had I keep going back to that Jets game because they should have won by 20. If they had just won that game, well, then you're 4-7, and it's like, all right, we'll sweep Baltimore. Sweep Baltimore and let's see where you're at in the division. Didn't do it. And so they are where they are. I don't blame Joe Burrow for wanting to return. Again, my mindset would have been, all right, if we're pushing the envelope here and we're going to press this button, let's fully press it. And it feels like they're 3/4 of the way pressing it. And it's just really tough for me to see the path for this to be worth it. Joe Burrow is returning with the Bengals tied for last place in the North. They're tied with the Browns right now. Like, just to be clear, they both have 3 wins. This is the Browns have 1 win from Joe Flacco, 1 win with Dylan Gabriel, 1 win with Shador Sanders. Kevin Stefanski feels like a guy who's out. Like, that's the team you're tied with. So we're talking about the Ravens and the Steelers and all of those things. But I just want to point out that reality of where the Bengals are at and what they're asking Joe Burrow to do.
And they're asking him to do it again with the defense that, yes, there are some signs of life in the last couple of weeks, and we've talked about those on film episodes. They're generally isolated to a few players, and Geno Stone had a great game this week. We're going to talk about that in the film episode. Maybe Jalen Davis can be a shot in the arm in the secondary if he can maintain the level of play that he showed up with against who did the Bengals play yesterday? This is unreal.
Patriots.
The Patriots. Wow.
I was muted. My bad.
Oh, this is what we get for breaking news, forcing us to record 2 shows in a day, Jake Lisco. Yeah, Jalen Davis might be something that helps them in the secondary, but there's still all these chronic issues at linebacker. Yeah, Miles Murphy's playing a little bit better. That's great. Joseph Osai has been playing as well as you could honestly hope Joseph Osai to play reasonably. Still not doing much as a pass rusher, but Al Golden's finding ways to dial up pressure at key moments to get off the field. And so, like, instead of the worst defense in the NFL, you have a defense that simply can't cover tight ends because the linebackers are bad. And that's one flaw, and not like the entire thing is terrible. The run D was pretty good last week, and maybe it's because the Patriots lost some linemen. But the point that I was trying to make with this before I forgot who the Bengals played yesterday was that they're asking Joe Burrow once again to do this with a defense that is awful. Even if it's not the worst defense in the last 25 years when all is said and done. And I think that they improved their stock in those categories against the Patriots. It's still probably a bottom 3 defense in the NFL. If they continue to look like they did yesterday and they can be average-ish and have issues with only tight ends for the rest of the way, then maybe you're cooking with something, but you're facing some better offenses too. So it's just such a tall task with what we know this defense has been so far, and the corners that are not being turned by so many players. And one of the problems here again is going to be they're not going to have Trey Hendrickson again. We'll discuss that a little bit later, but yeah, big uphill task.
Yeah, it is. And it opens it up for the Bengals to go 3-3 down the stretch, or 4-2. And instead of being in the playoffs because they won against the Jets and they were able to win one of these other games that were 1-score type contests, they're right in the middle again. And they have that dead cat bounce that you talk about. There's the phrase. I can't believe I beat you to it, but I did. And that sucks. That's why, like, when I talk about playing them against the Patriots, it's not about, push Joe and risk Joe and risk the franchise. It has nothing to do with that. It's like, if you're going to do that, if you're going to risk him, if you're going to put him out there, knowing all the flaws and knowing how unlikely it is that they make the playoffs, do it with the chance to actually make it. Do it with the chance to not end up with the 15th pick or the 13th pick or the 12th pick. You're either going to the playoffs or you shut them down because why, and do that. And so that's it, is the dead cat bounce is real because they're going to win more games this year. Joe Burrow is going to matter. And odds are we're still mid-January talking about the offseason, not a playoff game. And that's a heck of a place to be in because that's in the middle. And you don't want to be in the middle. You want to be the extreme one way or the other. Holding the trophy or drafting early, especially when you have your franchise quarterback. And instead the Bengals, again, likely stuck in the middle.
And a lot of that's because of the team they built and their inability to win, like, complementary football in some of these winnable games. And it's just very frustrating to see this be the case again, with or without Joe. This was happening last year with Joe Burrow playing at an MVP level. And there were games where the offense didn't finish. Obviously, we talked about that a lot last season, but largely it was that the defense didn't do enough last year. And we talked about all the what ifs in that Patriots game, and those are going to loom large for another year. Again, it's these AFC East opponents. Again, it's what ifs about the Patriots, what ifs about the Jets, and instead, you're staring at this very difficult proposition of Ravens, Bills, Ravens. And then maybe you can start to talk. Like, if they get through that stretch and win all three of those games, then you can start to talk.
The NFL season is rolling along, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for the weekend with this can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits how I like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add a little more energy to your Sunday. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
Don't look now. It's a fast turnaround for the Kansas City Chiefs. How do they get out front?
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
We're going to consolidate a couple of things here as we get ready for this jump on Thanksgiving Day. And my question to you, Matt, this is maybe the quickest turnaround and maybe the tightest string that we've seen them go through in a number of years. There's some injuries. We're going to get into those, but as a team, as a whole, getting back after having knocked off what was the premier offense in the league for a bit, now you get another one that doesn't quite have a defense that I'm quite as scared of. But how do they reset, Matt, on this kind of like 3-day cycle to get down, have a simulated practice, 10-10-10, and another simulated practice that is basically nothing? How do they get ready for this?
Yeah, I asked that question particularly to Kareem Hunt today because he had the 30 touches that he's going to be bouncing back from. And it's like, hey, how do you put it behind you? And how do you get ready to turn around again and play on a Thursday after having that much of a workload? And he was just like, you sleep, you get some massages, you get in the cold tub, and he's like, stay hydrated. That's pretty much. And he's like, stay off your feet. It's just be rest as much as you possibly can. I mean, they had one practice this week that was on Tuesday. It was a quick 10-10-10, 90 minutes. So nothing too strenuous. I mean, they're focusing on the game plan. That's what they're focusing on. And, you count on just what you did during the game as being kind of the exercise and the prep you need physically for this game, because by the time Thursday comes along, you're just hoping you're recovered from Sunday.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy for me to look at this and go, okay, they have to go into this game with all the injuries that they've been dealing with. Maybe they get Pacheco back. Maybe that's going to help out in this scenario and get them ready. They're not going to have Trey Smith. They're likely not going to have Noah Gray just because of the fast turnaround. I don't think you can get Noah Gray back because of the concussion. So you're going to be out those two players, and you're going up against the Dallas defense that hasn't been good, but they just got a new piece in Quinnen Williams, who's going to be basically probably inserted to go after the guy that Trey Smith is being replaced by. So you have a very tough task against this Cowboys offense, who is very good in and of themselves before you even start talking about, the Chiefs going up against the Cowboys defense.
Yeah, and teams do this. I mean, last year there was a lot of focus on the fact that the NFL jiggered the schedule around so that the Chiefs could play that 3 games in 11 days and the Saturday game, the Christmas Day game. But this is the same kind of time frame. But think about the opponents. You've got 2 games on the road. You're at Denver. You come home for the Colts, and now you're going at Dallas. I think this is a tougher turnaround than the Chiefs, than that 3 games in 11 days last year for the Chiefs around Christmas, just because of the 2 games on the road and the quality of the opponent. So opponents and all 3 of them. So I think it is a tough challenge. And you mentioned it, Chris. I mean, this is why I think that to a certain degree for both teams, this is going to be a bit of a scouting problem, because if you're the Chiefs, I don't know how much of the Dallas scouting report before Quentin Williams really applies. I mean, I think you're almost just tossing all that out the window. I mean, all you're looking at really are the last 2 or 3 games as far as how do you get prepared for this defense. And, for the Chiefs, I mean, if you're the Cowboys and you're watching Sunday's game film and you're thinking about the Chiefs, you're like, oh man, you got to get ready because this team runs the football all day long. Probably not going to do that, but I do think that was a little bit of the element with the game plan on Sunday from Andy Reid's standpoint was, what are you putting on film that the Cowboys are going to see, and what are your team is going to be running to set up for what you're going to run on Thursday. So I don't know what his grand strategy is and his grand vision. There's always something that Andy Reid sees as far as putting together game plans, because he's not the type to just game plan for one game in isolation. He's game planning knowing that he's got the Colts on Sunday and then he turns around and faces the Cowboys. So I'm sure there's something that he put on film, some elements that he wanted the Cowboys to see so that he can play off of it on Thursday.
I think you're absolutely right. The question to me is who's going to be there to do that. I love the full backfield. You guys know that's one of my favorites. I don't think the personnel is going to be quite the same, but they might use it. They may not. That may be a decoy just to put on film last week. But my question, Matt, is from what little you've seen and what little we've heard, is Isaiah Pacheco going to be able to go? Are we going to have any possibility of seeing the new acquisition, Dameon Pierce, or is it business as usual?
Yeah, I'm assuming that we are going to see Isaiah Pacheco this week. I mean, it's really hard to tell from the practice because, last week he was in a knee brace that I couldn't imagine anybody playing in. And, and now we've only got the one practice to go off of today on Tuesday to really make a judgment on what he's going to be doing. I mean, the Chiefs certainly are giving the impression that he is going to play. I don't know if that's a little gamesmanship. To just make the Cowboys prepare for the possibility, because it certainly still seems like, I mean, even if he plays, that he's not going to be 100%. And that Kareem is probably not going to be 100%. I don't get the sense that there's a lot of impetus about putting Dameon Pierce in there quite yet. So I'm assuming that we're not going to be seeing him on Thursday. I think they want to give him a little bit more time to get acclimated. Tuesday was literally going to be his only workout with the team just because of the short week and everything. So I think that's going to slow things down. They don't even know what they have yet in Dameon Pierce. So I think that's why they want a little bit more look at him. But does that mean we get more, Brashard Smith working into the lineup? If Isaiah doesn't play, is it another, Clyde Edwards-Helaire day? And then you got to factor in what's going on with Noah Gray, because that's going to impact you a little bit too. And you talk about, full backfields and everything. I mean, Chiefs like to put their tight ends in the backfield too. And if you don't have Noah Gray and now it's a Robert Tonyan and or a Jared Wiley game, that it affects your lineup.
And I wanted to ask you, do you think we'll see Wiley this week with Noah Gray out?
I mean, I'm hoping so as much for Jared Wiley as for anything else. I mean, I want to see him.
Right.
We haven't yet, and he's been there for that reason. And I was looking for him in the locker room today, and none of the tight ends were there. I think because of the short week, all the workout schedules are jiggered around, so I didn't get to see any of the tight ends. Didn't get to see Wiley, but I did talk to him a few weeks ago, and he mentioned that really after about the first 4 weeks of the season, he felt 100%, that he felt like he was ready to play and ready to go. So anytime that the club needed him, he was ready. So he's been doing scout team work, obviously, since then, and it's next man up mentality. That. But I firmly expect that we'll see him, because I can't imagine the Chiefs just going with 2 tight ends